A warm welcome to you e-loungers to another episode of the e-lounge. Every one of us in the workplace is affected by bullying, and as leaders, we have a role to play in building psychologically safe workspaces. This is according to Dr. Ngao Motsei, author of a book, Building Psychologically Safe Spaces, Safeguarding Your Workplace Against Bullying. Dr. Motsei is an independent leadership consultant, workplace bullying expert, director of companies, and the Gautrain Institute of Business Science Adjunct Faculty. She has worked in human resources, strategy, leadership, and consulting for 25 years, and in the last 8 years, she has focused her work mainly in the field of respect, humanity, bullying, and psychological safety in the workplace. Dr. Motsei provides facilitated awareness-raising interventions on bullying in the workplace, specialized coaching to those abrasive leaders who've been accused of bullying, and team repair interventions in the wake of harassment and bullying incidents. Dr. Motsei is also a trained coach who specializes in working with abrasive leaders, and her reason for being is to rehumanize the workplace one leader at a time. In addition to the industry boards, Dr. Motsei also sits on the International Association on Workplace Bullying and Harassment, which is a global membership organization of academics, researchers, and practitioners in the workplace bullying and harassment space. She has presented at numerous conferences and moderated sessions on various topics relating to workplace bullying, people-centered leadership, and creating positive human-centered cultures. The e-lounge is one of our knowledge-sharing platforms aimed at improving the culture of reading. Remember that those who deserve to lead do not just read, but are seekers of diverse perspectives. They are open to learning and share their learnings for the betterment of all.
A very warm welcome to the e-lounge. Today, we've got Dr. Ngao Motsei, who is a leadership expert, a GIBS Adjunct Faculty member, and also a director in many different companies as a member of the boards there. And today we are discussing her book, fresh off the press, if I may say, Safeguarding Your Workplace Against Bullying. It's about building psychologically safe spaces. It's a lot to take on. But before I get into the book itself, let me welcome Dr. Ngao. A very warm welcome to you. We are very happy that you accepted our invitation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm actually very privileged to be talking to you about the subject very, very close to my heart today.
Thank you so much. We have only an hour, but I do want to ask everybody watching us today to go to the back of the book before we start with our conversation. There are two, I'd say, assessments, forms at the back to check or to assess as to whether have you been bullied, are you being bullied at this point in time, and whether what is your propensity of being a bully as an individual. It's a book that requires us to reflect, which is why I do want us to start with the reflections before we go on to the conversation. So please do the assessment and let us know how it goes, hopefully, in the follow-up conversations. As I said, the book is called Building Psychologically Safe Spaces in the Workplace. Dr. Ngao, a little bit about yourself. I did tell the colleagues that you are a faculty member, an academic, and also a business leader. But do you want to share a little bit more about yourself?
Thank you. I mean, I always say that every time I ask to share something about myself, I never know what's going to come. But I think the best way to understand myself is to introduce myself is that my name is Ngao. Very, very unusual name. Yes. Almost everybody asks me all the time, what does it mean? What is it short for? Yeah. So it's not short for anything. That's it.
Yeah.
And the significance of it is that I'm named after my father's Rakgadi. Okay. You know, in our culture, in Botswana, Rakgadi, and even in many of our African cultures, Rakgadi plays a very important role, is a very important person in the family. Yes. So what had happened is at different parts of my life, I used to be known by a different name. And at a certain point in my life, I suppose you evolve as a person. When I understood, I kind of came to understand who I am and my connection with my Rakgadi, that I was my father's Rakgadi that I was named after. Yeah. So I decided at the one point, I remember many years ago, I was at a conference in Sun City and I decided, why am I not embracing my name? And it is my first name. So I am Ngao, and Rakgadi, my father's Rakgadi called me Ngwana wa Ngwako. Ngwana wa Ngwako because I had a sister. The firstborn at my home is my sister. Yes. And then I had a sister, Bontle, whose name was Bontle, who passed on. Yes. And 2 years later, I was born. So I don't take for granted being here. Yeah. I often say Bontle passed in order for me to be here. Yeah. So this is who I am. And this is, I suppose, what shapes who I am, what I do, why I do what I do. Yes. Because I don't take the gift of being here for granted.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that a bit about yourself. We are, as people who review the books, we are always interested and fascinated by how people are named, who are they named after, what the name means, especially in an African context. Reading through the book, you say various reasons as to why you wrote the book, what does it mean, what you want to achieve. But I just want people watching us at this moment to just hear from you. Dr. Ngao, here's a book. And it might seem small, and as they say, dynamites, they come packed in small packages. Why did you write the book?
First of all, the book started many years ago. It was a culmination of my PhD research. Yeah. And a few years after defending the PhD, getting the PhD, and every time I engaged with people, they would be like, wow. That's an interesting topic. At that point, it began to dawn on me that this message is very important, and the message has to go out because beyond your PhD thesis, because nobody reads a PhD thesis. Yeah. So that's where, unbeknownst to me, that's where the seed actually started, that the message of what I have done has to go out. Yeah. But most importantly, because I think it's a very important message because organizations have become, because leaders are driven, there are always targets to meet, we have actually lost a sense of people that make the results, that drive the results, are actually human. So this is why I speak about having lost the humanity in organizations. So my reason for writing it was to rehumanize organizations, and I say specifically one leader at a time, because I work specifically with leaders, because I believe if you get it right with leaders, then it cascades throughout the organization. The other is because it was a personal experience, I realized years later that even my line manager that bullied me was not even aware at the time that what they were doing might have been bullying, nor was I aware in the beginning that what was happening was bullying. Yes. Because some of these activities and in behaviors in organizations almost like become accepted as normal, as the way we do things around here. Yeah. So I really wanted to write something that's accessible, but also as part of my raising awareness around this silent epidemic in organizations, and I call it silent epidemic because we don't talk about it. And people that also experience that don't talk about it for different reasons.
Dr. Ngao, I want to get back to the notion of this is the way we do things around here. But I think for somebody listening and trying to understand, because as you say, it's a silent epidemic. I want you to describe for us, define for us, firstly, what is bullying, right? And what are the kind of bullying that are there, or bullies? I know that in your book, you actually refer to people as aggressive, oppressive leaders. I'll park that for a sec, but let's just stick with the term bullying. What is bullying, and what kind of bullying do we get in the workplace?
One of the things, and I'm going to respond this for the first time in South Africa. In South African workplace, we have a legal framework in the Code of Good Practice for the prevention and elimination of harassment in the workplace. And that in the code, they define, I actually really love this phrase, they define bullying as any behavior that impairs dignity. And then it goes on to give examples of that. But I really, really want for us to stay with that. I mean, almost like every time the first time I saw it, impairs dignity. And how you have a range of behavior that does that. And some of it, so part of the definition, examples of behaviors that impair dignity. Some are covert. In other words, you can actually see them. For example, leaders consistently all the time screaming at people, demeaning people in front of others, and calling them names, you're useless, you're this. Others, which are even more difficult to discern, can be subtle, whether it's manipulation, whether also hidden. Most of the abrasiveness come hidden under the notion of performance. I'm not an abrasive leader, or I'm not a bully. I'm just managing performance. I'm a strong manager, and I manage performance hard. And at that point, I make a distinction, for example, that you can still be a strong manager, drive performance, and watch your conduct. Where it crosses over to bullying is the conduct, the manner in which you do that, you hold people accountable, and how you leave them. Does the behavior, does the way you hold people accountable impair their dignity or not?
Okay. There is statistics, and they're mostly based in the US, but I think as a researcher and an expert in this topic, you probably have more in touch with what the figures look like. But I was astounded as we were preparing for this with my colleagues, that at least 30% of the workforce, or people in the workplace, are actually being bullied. Just talk to us a little bit about those statistics and what that does to our workforce, and what that does to the mental health generally in the workspace.
I don't think we can actually know the extent of the prevalence of bullying, because first of all, we don't talk about it, and for fear of further intimidation. But the figure of 30% sounds about right. I mean, from some of the literature review, I haven't looked at the research in recent time. But when I was starting out, the figure of 30% sounds about right. What it says is actually the impact on productivity, because if 30% of your workforce is under duress, under bullying, it also, remember, it impacts them personally. High anxiety, high levels of stress. And when somebody is unhappy and has got a high level of stress, they're also prone to make mistakes. In other instances, they're booked off because they are sick, the stress levels, therefore it impacts on productivity. So while certain managers, particularly those that have got chronic abrasive behaviors, can get the results, it's actually not sustainable. So the sustainability of the results of productivity of those organizations is also questionable. It is short term, because the minute people do things because they're afraid, and also the other thing is that you also lose. The impact is that you lose talent. Some of the best gifted people are not going to stay. The other potential is potential reputational damage, because at some point, it gets to the legalities of I cannot take this anymore, I leave. I view this as constructive dismissal, for example.
You spoke about, the notion of this is how we do things around here. And we've seen, at least I have in my example, the different sectors or different industries, they behave differently. So for instance, if you interact with colleagues in the construction sector, in the mining sector, there is a certain, I want to say, bro code of, it's very macho, it's very crass, people say what they think, it's very butch. And I think colleagues, male or female, feel compelled to show up in that space, in that particular way. What do you say to a leader who says to somebody who gets into that space and says, I feel like this place is full of bullying, it's and the leader who says, you're just not the right fit then for this place, because this is how we do things around here. You probably are soft, or you probably are not cut out to perform in this environment. What do we say in instances like that?
Well, one of the things, and this is the one of the reasons I work with almost exclusively with leaders, decision makers, because I realize that organizations take the tone of the leader. So the way, in your example, when you say this is the way we do things around here, what we call institutional bullying, essentially, it turns out to be that the biggest leader is the biggest bully. The person at the highest corner, big corner office, is the person that also has abrasive behaviors that bully. And when that happens, everybody else then does what the leader does. And before you know it, then the next layer does that. This is how they lead. This is how they get results from people. Before you know it, everybody behaves in that way. So to answer your question directly, it starts with the leader. And I talk about also psychological safety. The part of the responsibility of building psychological safety, for starters, I lay it at the feet of the leaders, because they are the ones that create. It starts with the behavior. So there's leader behavior. The drivers of psychological safety are leader behavior, team relationships, and organizational structures. So it starts with leaders behaving in a way that they want the culture to be like. And the next thing is, what is the nature? How do they relate not just to themselves or lead themselves, but how do they relate to their peers? And then, of course, once that is the case, you have then at an organizational level, it's important to put structures, whether it be policies or committees and champions, that is actually going to make sure that you do create an environment that's safe, that's psychologically safe, where every employee in the organization feels safe, that they can raise their concern, and not just their concern, but also contribute, positively contribute by providing feedback and recommendations on what can be improved.
In chapter 5, I think, Dr. Ngao, you share insights, about human leadership and how leaders should be showing up and how leaders should be doing what you're saying in safeguarding their spaces against bullying. But I want us to just look at practical examples of, so from the prism we're looking at is from somebody who's labeled a bully or an abrasive leader and somebody who's labeled as the bully. So in your book, you talk about 3 players in this little game of, it's not a little game, it's really very serious. But there's these 3 players, the person who's being bullied, the bully, and also the bystander. But I want us to start with, firstly, the leader in this environment, or that is seen or labeled or accused of bullying. What are some of the stories that come out or perspectives that come out as you lead them through or you coach them through this process? What is the sentiments that you're getting from them?
Well, first of all, I do not call them, you notice I do not call them bullies, because I believe not every bully is a bully. Because in my working with them and in the research, the key findings are that not many are fully aware that how they show up and how they behave impact that direct environment. So I refer to them as abrasive leaders that bully, and simply because abrasion is a behavior, and a behavior you can change with the right support and with self-awareness. You can change the behavior, whereas a bully is almost like an identity. So there's some permanence to it. But to the question that you're asking about some of the insights, I get, and just from interacting with them, also has a bearing on what I call the social conditioning of organizations, because we're living in fast-paced environment, where we're driving performance and targets at all costs. And when you do reach your targets, you get rewarded very nicely with trips, with bonuses. So therefore, it encourages the social conditioning, organizational social conditioning in a way, indirectly, supports that and creates the recurring of that behavior. The other is that many people, some of the leaders I'm working with, have gotten results this way. This is all they know. And it's more about the now. What we get into is the notion of what got you here won't get you there.
Absolutely.
The world has changed. The world of work has changed. It looks quite differently. And to get the best out of people, you need you need to lead differently. Some, it might be the backgrounds where they come, because we are shaped by our backgrounds, where we come from and how we've seen interactions. And some, we are the first in our families to be in positions such as this. So it's important that we show up, we demonstrate that we actually can. And some of the insights, in some instances, people get promoted too quickly and in ways that not all of us get promoted. I get promoted too quickly to higher positions because I have good relationships. I'm close to power. I have proximity to power, so I get thrown thrust into the deep end or into positions for which I may not have been ready for. So there's a myriad of reasons and things that are insights I get.
Then from the bully's point of view, what are some of the insights that are coming? What is it that attracts an abrasive leader to this behavior of bullying, whether it's a subordinate or a team member?
Many times the simple thing is, I'm just doing my job. I'm just driving results. I am here not to play lovey-dovey, to make friends. I'm here to do my job and to drive. And some would say things like, I don't sugarcoat things. I'm a straight talker. I'm a direct talker, and so there's different reasons. And then of course the others, once we get there, when a little bit of self-awareness begin to build, some of the comments and things they would say would be like, I actually had no idea.
How can a leader who wants to safeguard their environment against bullying look out for these cues? What are these cues that they should look out for in their organization that would give them a sense that there is bullying here, developing as a culture, or we are fine?
Yeah, I mean, some of the cues might be a turnover. Under a certain leader. In one of the instances, the scenario I speak about, which also involves me in the book, is that there were 3 people that left in 3 years under the same leader. So that is one cue, and the other cue might be people transferring out of, wanting to transfer out of your unit into other business units, and no one wanting to transfer in.
Yeah.
And the other thing also, especially as a leader, looking at what amount of time are you spending on addressing issues around grievances, employee grievances, towards around one specific leader. So those are at the top of my head some of the tell signs that might mean there is something, there might be something going on here. So let's, which might warrant taking a bit of a look inside to see what might be happening.
So turnover, nobody wants to come to this team, and there is grievances or dealing with those issues. That those are the things that you would say visible cues. Because one would argue in South Africa, where there's shortages perhaps of jobs, the turnover might not be as visible because people might be sitting there. I think there's a scenario actually where you are saying that in fact employees that are reaching retirement, close to retirement, they are not likely to leave because they just want to get their pension and leave. In the meantime, the impact then on the individual and the impact on the organization, that remains, regardless of the fact that they're not able to leave. Here's something that I found interesting. We always think of bullying as it's a bigger child in a playground, and there's smaller little children, and this bigger guy or girl is going to bully others. However, you speak about upward bullying. So where a junior is bullying the senior. And I just want us to share a little bit about that. How does that manifest? Because you would assume that if I'm the CEO and the executive, I've got all the power, why would I be bullied by a junior? In what instances does this happen?
So this is one of rare occurrences. It does occur though. At the last, when I last looked, 14%, which is also quite surprisingly high. 14%. There's 14% of upward bullying. How it happens is everything around bullying has got what is at play is power or power imbalance. So in this instance, I might be your subordinate, but I'm very close to your manager, to your line manager. So that already you can see how it plays. There's certain things, and I may have applied for the position. And you get the position. I don't get it. All of a sudden, we were peers. I have to report to you, but I have very, very strong relationships with your line manager. So what do I do? How does it manifest? Not doing, almost like ignoring everything that you are saying I should do, and jumping jumping without even touching base with you, or collegially, this is what I'm thinking, I go straight to the line manager, essentially just disrespecting your authority as a manager. So that's a common way it would, but essentially the principle, the at the center of it is my access to power, or proximity to power over your, people talk about over your pay grade, over your pay grade. So my accessibility to that and having those strong relationships also implies that often means that I would have sometimes I would be privy to some information that otherwise I would not be privy to, including about you. Because I interact, I go to places with leaders who are your direct, who are also above you. So that's one scenario that it typically plays.
Yeah. So I know that you're specific about workplace bullying, but I couldn't help but to think about in a scenario that you've just described, where it's the manager's spouse who's at the top, and the spouse is probably junior and in my team, and because of that is their spouse, there's equal power there between the two of them, and we go to the same church, and even at church, there's a power dynamic playing out there. Would you say that these behaviors are likely to manifest themselves also in our social spaces, home, church, other social circles? So, for instance, if I'm a bully at work, am I likely to be a bully in other social circles?
Because most of the bullying is behavior based. So abrasive behavior, where if it's meted, it does not matter where it is. So yes, there is a likelihood, because it's all about behavior, it's all about power. If I'm, in the scenario at church, if I hold a specific position in church, it provides me power, and it means that if and I'm interacting with you, and you are at a certain level or position, there is power imbalance. And with every power imbalance, there is, and combine it with abrasion, it's likely to manifest in bullying behavior.
I read an article, I think it's one of the Harvard Business Review articles, where the one leader was saying that it's just pure leadership skills. In their organization, they don't have bullying. There are no abrasive leaders. They just view it as, there's some poor leadership skills there. What's your take on that? Because it sounded to me as if it's dumbing down the problem. And I was interested to hear your view in terms of what's the correlation between poor leadership skills and actually dealing with abrasive leaders?
So my starting point when I work with leaders is that not to get too, caught up in defining it's this, it's not this. It's poor leadership, it's not bullying. So I get into, let's not get into fact battle. Or defining. So yes, it might, there's some level of truth in the sense that leaders that end up being bullying have got poor management skills, have got poor interpersonal skills, relationship skills. So there is, one of the contributors, but to just label it as it's just poor management skills, we don't have bullying here. So part of it is, maybe the starting point is let's define the kind of leaders that we want here. And once we define that, we define what are the behaviors that we tolerate and we will not tolerate, and leave the labeling if that's the case. But it's for me, it actually, what matters to me is, and those that work in this space, is how we treat people. And how we treat people, does it impair their dignity or not? And the other thing that people actually fail, some of the leaders who sweep things under the carpet and not address bullying behavior when it's reported, what they don't realize is happier employees are much more productive, actually, as opposed to when the weekend comes and it's Sunday. And, you know, people feeling, oh, my word, do I have to go back to that place?
Yeah.
And when you're there, they're not fully applying themselves. You're doing the bare minimums so as to just keep trouble away.
One of my colleagues jokingly said in one of our MBA classes that culture is how employees feel on a Sunday.
Yes, exactly. That actually, does have a ring true.
In this triangle, we've dealt with the abrasive leader and probably what causes that, and we'll come to how they can be helped. Let's talk a little bit now about the victim or the target. Let's call it the target, the person who's experiencing the bullying.
Yeah.
What can they do?
One of the things that I actually talk about here, first and foremost, write it down, and in the book, one of the tools at the back, the one tool is about self-assessment to see whether leaders might have the propensity to bully or not. The other is I have to also acknowledge that I took it from one of my colleagues, Dr. Ngao Motsei. So with her permission, that I got it into the book. But what that does. First and foremost, what the target ought to do, I invite them to do, is look at that self-assessment to ascertain that it is indeed what is happening is bullying, and essentially gathering data.
Yeah.
What happened exactly when, how long has it been going? And with that, one of the things that, because actually doing that might also be helpful. At least one of the, again, for me, just having writing, because I used to journal a lot about this, and I found that by doing that was kind of helpful in itself. And then, look for help, seek help, professional help if it's possible. And or go to your EAP, Employee Assistance Program, in organizations, because I know I'm not going to get into HC, go to HR, because the many people that I speak to and have interviewed had always said that they don't trust HR. Or if you have somebody, just talk to somebody. And then ultimately, especially after gathering all the data, I suggest reporting it. Because sometimes people don't report because they are discouraged to report it because they're thinking, oh, nothing's going to be done about it. But that also perpetuates the situation. So report it, and at least, at the very least, you have record of it and something might be done about it.
I'm glad you mentioned HR departments, because in the statistics we were looking at, they do fall short of what the employees expect in terms of dealing with bullying in the workplace. And I think in South Africa, we're in a fortunate state of having the good practice, conduct of good practice. What would be your advice to HR practitioners, departments, in terms of dealing with this? And I like what you said in the book in terms of prevention rather than trying to cure this disease that has been manifesting for a while. But what can HR departments proactively do?
So one of the things, at least to not knock my fellow HC people, what I found is many did not even know how to deal with it. But now we have a legal framework in the form of the Code of Conduct. So there are procedures and they're spelled out what employers can do to create first of all, create awareness around the issue of workplace bullying, and also put in place practices and processes to ensure that it supports the raising of awareness. So I think now more and more, and I'm finding I work a lot now with more HC executives who are really serious about being people and culture champions. Okay. So one of the almost like what I invite them to do is to actually be proactive, have raised awareness. I'm working with a few organizations right now where they've started, for example, the anti-bullying and harassment campaigns, and where the CEOs, the HC in partnership with the CEOs, because it's also important for these things to work, to be endorsed by the CEOs, the leading leader of the organization, for example. So those are some of the things that I encourage them to do, and I'm working with some to put in place these processes in the organizations.
The third party or player in the triangle is the bystander. Yeah. Can you describe a bystander as, an employee, colleague of the person who's being bullied, who decides, it's not affecting them, therefore they are not going to do something, they won't report it, and so on. And in instances where they do something, there's consequences there. Yeah. What can bystanders do? Why do you encourage that they shouldn't be bystanding, actually?
Yeah. Well, what I encourage bystanders, because it's even the self-preservation is short-lived, because you might, and I often use the phrase, today's bystander is tomorrow's target. Yeah. And so I always ask them, think about how it might be, how it might feel when you are in this situation. Everybody is aware what is going on, but nobody is doing or saying anything about it. Yeah. So and the other message, which might seem a bit harsh, I will say there's no such thing as an innocent bystander, because by watching and seeing and not doing anything about it or reporting, you are complicit. At the same time, I do know and understand that it's not easy to speak up, because environments do not allow speaking up. When you speak up, you become victimized yourself. Yes. So part of it, this is an integrated solution is required, but a lot is really dependent on the leaders to create an environment where even bystanders can get off from being bystanders to upstanders, and it takes psychological safety.
You speak about bulletproofing yourself against bullying. I must say, I read it and I said, I don't know if one can bulletproof themselves as individuals. I think talk us through how exactly can one bulletproof themselves, and how effective have those strategies been?
Well, everybody else is different, and I also say in the book I give examples of how I bully-proofed myself. But I mean, it's more just about how do you continue to be sane in an insane environment. How do you make sure that you don't lose your sanity? And so that's a starting point, to make sure that you're still able to function. And I make the point that if at all possible, with all the help that you can get, just make sure that your performance doesn't drop, because everything else then that gives the abrasive leader the ammunition, basically, to say you're not performing. So part of it is I really, really encourage writing down everything, because at some point you're going to have to confront the abrasive leader that's bullying you. But you can only do that with factual evidence of what actually has been happening. So that's one way.
They're bullying me in the shadows. They send me these WhatsApp and they have what is it called, the thing where you put in a timer on your WhatsApp messages so they disappear.
Wow. Yeah.
So what must this person do to bulletproof themselves? Because this whether it's a colleague or it's a leader in this instance, they are constantly bullying them behind the scenes, and then when everybody is there, it's as though everything is normal.
So this is one of those that are very difficult. The manipulative and the overt, the subtle ones, where it's similar to, you know, when somebody is bullying you when you are together behind the closed doors and when you're outside. Because one of the things you have, many of these abrasive leaders that I've worked with that bully are quite politically savvy. They know how to do it. Some of the tactics, such as the one that you are talking about, is part of the tactics, because the evidence is between, you know, the two of you. So how you do it, again, I always say, at the last moment, you have to build up to actually having that conversation. To you know, and there are ways to have that conversation in a way that you know, in a way that you're not going to draw even more intimidation, more bullying. And those are some of the things that I work with people around. How do you have a conversation where the message can land? Because the thing is, you can't engage with the bully toe for toe, because using their own tactics, because you're not gonna win.
You'll come out.
So that yes, exactly. So there are ways that you could actually do that.
You speak about support, Dr. Ngao. I do want to read a part here on your book about the people you appreciate in having supported you, at least in writing the book. But I do get a sense that even some of them, when you were going through your own period of being bullied by someone. So on page 65, you write, when I decided to write the book, I had a sage advice from many people, most notably my sister, Dr Motsei, Dr. Lulu Gwangwa, Manda Chiforalo, my colleague at GIBS, who had just written a book himself. Lisa, I'm sorry, Lisa, I can't Vitbetsky. Thank you for your immeasurable support and for lifting me up when I was down. And I think you go on then to Dr. Lulu Gwangwa about the support. And you do mention in the book, I think it was Professor Stella Nkomo, whom you reached out to quite a lot in support. How do friends, colleagues, family members support somebody who's going through bullying when they have actually disclosed to them that, hey, having done this assessment, man, I think I'm being bullied. And in the extreme version, I'm being bullied in the shadows as well by an extreme manipulator.
I think what you've just read and mentioned speaks to the point maybe that I tried to make earlier, and maybe I didn't make it as eloquent as I should have, is that who is your core support? You know, who's your tribe? We often talk about who's your tribe. You know, just those 3, 4, or 5, and there are never more than 5 people that when things are really bad, family, and sometimes it's also family, but sometimes it's actually best if it's not family members, because for family it becomes even tougher, because they are, not that it's not tougher with your other tribe members, but somebody that might also just be there. But sometimes it's not even about trying to help or offer support, because they would never really understand what you're going there, but they are with you, and they listen, and they create space when you're really down. When you reach out, they always avail themselves to you. So that's also what I would recommend for people going through that. Who are your 2 or 3 trusted people who can talk to you, who you can be messy with, cry the ugly cry, and really just get it out, and who support and just by being there, because sometimes that's just what you need.
So abrasive leaders, Dr. Ngao, when you coach them, especially the in the shadows, manipulative, hopefully they've come to an understanding, the self-awareness that this is what they've been doing. What is the one or two things that comes out from them in terms of this behavior?
I mean, they're different, and a lot has to do with conditioning of some sort. I mean, the one person, very, very strong person, very bright, but because when I get into coaching arrangement situations with people, we go deeper into because what people see sometimes at work is the surface, and so we go deeper into the manifestation of what shapes them, what has, because everybody else is a unique. There's something that actually shapes the person that you are. So we sometimes in the deep conversations that we have, they go there, and there's even a deeper realization from the leaders that, okay, this is where it's coming from. And I do that because I believe, I really do believe in the notion that leadership is an expression of who we are. So the starting point is actually to get to people, the leaders, understanding who they are, and also because my approach is not accusatory. I'm not starting from a position of blame. I'm starting from, help me understand, and let me help you to understand why you rub people the wrong way. Why all these negative perceptions around you, and then together let's look at strategies to address them permanently. And
they redeem.
I truly believe with the right, the behavior is retractable. It can change, and many change, but it takes it, whether that happens or not. The success of the coaching depends entirely on the leader, because once all this information is revealed for you, it's more often asked the simple question, forget whether it's true or not, whether it's fact or perceptions. I don't want to get into that. The big question, the main question for me is this the way you want to be perceived? And if the answer is no, then let's go to work then.
There are reflections actually in the book for some of the leaders who were kind enough to share their experiences with you, that you've coached through, from being an abrasive leader to better person, more humane leader, I would say. And their reflections, I won't read their reflections, but I think that those who are listening to us now, it's good to just get to the other side of the fence, so the other side of the story, because we often hear the word bullying. A bully is never me, it's someone else, right? And from this book, what I was able to gather, especially from the self-assessments, is that you are 1 degree away from being a bully, 1 degree away from being bullied yourself, and even inches closer to being, if not right there, a bystander. So it's quite important to just, and I think I do recommend that if people can read this, it makes for a great conversation. I think in your next book, Dr. Ngao, we should look at these insights, because you talk about coaching leaders and going to the inside. So it kind of reminds me of the book, What Happened to You. There seems to be something else going on with the leader if they are showing up like that, as opposed to, the better version of themselves. But my next question is on bulletproofing the organization and working, with abrasive leaders. staff members, you would understand, employees would want nothing to do with that leader. Whether they've been through Dr. Ngao and now they are sage, they are better, people just stick to one perception that they've had with them. How do you reintroduce an abrasive leader to the workplace, and how do you prepare that workplace and bulletproof it for the future bullying?
So one of the things, I suppose it is in the methodology. Before I use a methodology, the workplace, what is it? The boss whispering methodology. So the method really, before I get into coaching, into a coaching relationship with somebody, part of the methodology, the method means I interview the direct reports, a few peers, and the line manager. And while I do that, I really and truly believe that the only and one of the best ways that any leader can understand how they show up as a leader is through the eyes of those that they lead. And through the eyes that they lead with. So I get into, I interview all of them, I create a thematic report, pitch the information, obviously, because the process is completely confidential. And then I come and have a conversation with the leader around, introducing the themes. These are the themes, and these are what people say about you. And from then we get into the coaching. Further on, I go back and say, are you seeing any shift, and so on and so forth. But after, at the end of the coaching, then what I also do is that I have team sessions with the leader and that direct report, because you can imagine that during the bullying, trust would be completely broken. So part of what I then do at the conclusion is I have sessions with the leader and the team to rebuild how are we going to go. But what tends to happen is that through the coaching, the leaders, the direct reports already begin to experience the leader differently. Of course, some might be, oh, is this for real or is this show? So but also I work with the team also to help them, to provide them with tools of how to support not just to support the leader, but for them to also understand and see their role. Because some would be, I'm just waiting for them to trip. So we go through that process and just making sure that there's sustainability, the work, and of course the work always continues. Nobody ever gets to be perfect. It happens to the best of us, even once in a while you can be abrasive, but the main thing is when you do, to catch yourself with heightened self-awareness, you catch yourself and self-correct.
Dr. Ngao, as we conclude, I want to just, if you can, you've made it your life purpose, let me put it this way, to take your experience and contribute to a better society, a society that is free of abrasive leaders, perhaps not completely free, but at least going a greater mile into doing that. Where to from here? As you do this work, as you work with different leaders and organizations, and I'm sure somebody listening to this is thinking, she works with the abrasive leaders. What about us? On the other end, because you work with those teams in aid of the abrasive leaders' progress, but they are those who are left behind in terms of what kind of intervention should they be getting as well, so that they don't themselves turn into abrasive leaders.
So where to from now? I mean, this is only the beginning. This is only the beginning. But the reason I chose to work with abrasive leaders is that many of, and rightfully so, many of the support programs through employee assistance programs in organizations are for targets.
Yeah.
And I felt that I quickly realized that in my experience working in organizations, however great the interventions may be, I realized that they would not be potentially sustainable because there was one important voice missing. And I was curious to hear the voice of the abrasive leader that bullies, and because I really do believe that they also ought to be part of the solution, and the only way they could be part of the solution is for them to be aware, to be also granted support, because the kind of coaching I do is specialized coaching, almost like for abrasive leaders. So so that's why, and this is only the beginning. I've only started doing work, for example, with abrasive leaders in earnest maybe in the past 2 years. So it's just the beginning.
We must thank you very much for, you were very self-aware and vulnerable in sharing your story of how you yourself were bullied. And I don't think any of us would have imagined that. And you speak about this a great deal in terms of just because you're a strong person and appear to be all your things together doesn't mean that you cannot be a victim to this. So we want to thank you very much for not only letting us into your academic prowess and your coaching work, but also saying this is my experience and this is what I'm going to do with my experience to make it better for everyone else out there. Your parting shots?
Thank you so much, and also don't underestimate what you are doing. So I'm very grateful for you and for eLounge. This platform is also part of raising awareness, so it's part of the solution. So I'm really grateful for the opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Continue doing what you're doing too.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ngao. We were with Dr. Ngao on safeguarding our workplaces and bulletproofing them to bullying. I just want to leave you with this. As a leader, as a colleague, as an individual, it's about empathy. It's about bringing back the humanity in our spaces, at the workplace and also in our homes, in ensuring that the South Africa we have tomorrow, we are living it better than what we found it. Thank you very much, and please do tune in to the next edition of the eLounge. Thank you.